Hey, so this is map 4, Death from Above, and presumably it's named for the helicopter from Apocalypse Now. But yeah, this lies in between map 3, which is a fairly conventional city map. Actually one of my least favorite maps in A.L.T, partly just because like it is fairly conventional. It's like non-linear, sort of in the style of like Downtown, map 14 in Doom, or you know, the industrial zone or the suburbs or something like that. And there's some surreal weird stuff in it, but I don't like it. It's not as distinctive to me. And then map 5, which is another city map that's pretty long, and it's kind of like a little bit more surreal and unconventional. You're in like a weird dormitory, like apartment building sort of area, and there's like train tracks that you have to get to, and then at the end, you know, you get to the train tracks and you like travel out of them and go to the next area and go to map 6, which I'm going to do another video about. But this map is a kind of weird interlude in between the two that's fairly short and very light on combat. You're just dealing with this Cyberdemon who presumably you don't have the resources to really fight or deal with yet. So he's just kind of there taunting you, and he just keeps appearing and following you around wherever, you know, the next place that you go is. And so like it's almost like a weird like Looney Tunes thing. You think you're sort of free of him and that you're going to move on to like a more conventional part of the map, or that the map is just going to get like start making more sense, and then it doesn't. It just kind of ends like, and there ends up being like a big confrontation at the end, which is like not a confrontation. So really all this is just like a weird puzzle sort of thing, or like an evasive sort of level. And like these teleporters, you can get stuck in them really easily. They're really weird. But yeah, there's this city, but you don't really get to interact with it very much. You can sort of see it from a distance, and there's a secret here that I found that I'll get to eventually. But yeah, there's like parts where you'll see like these big buildings and stuff in the background, but you don't really get to interact with them. They're just kind of off in the distance. And there's just a weird sense there. It feels much more like a different sort of game. It's not really something that you're used to seeing in a game like Doom, where really like there is a lot of interaction with a lot of the sort of sculptures, or you know, like structures or whatever that exists. So I think that's like what's really interesting and distinctive about this map, and it sort of hints at the more psychological stuff that the WoD really gets into later on, especially in the later maps, which I think do a really interesting job of like reflecting that. And all 5 of the first maps are by Azamael, which I hope I'm saying that right. But he really kind of captures and encapsulates like the feeling of the entire WoD, just because I really think that the story was presumably his idea, or at least primarily his idea, and he's the one who's like primarily responsible for shaping the feeling of the WoD. Although there are a lot of other really good maps by other authors, like map 6, which I'm going to talk about, which is one that's like really grown on me over time. But I think like one thing that I find interesting about A.L.T is like it's like almost kind of like making fun of Doom in a way, or it's recontextualizing it as this like very subjective, like almost like problematized narrative, where some of the tropes of Doom, where you're sort of in control, and there's this kind of just sense of like absolute action that you always have the ability to like manage, even in spite of the weirdness, is sort of just like, you know, mocked in a way, like maybe those cheesy sound effects that I was making fun of in another video, or saying that I really don't like, are actually calling attention to how just like weird and bizarre and grotesque it is in some way. And that's not something that necessarily, if you're a person who plays a lot of Doom, maybe you don't want to hear that. So in a way, like I'd almost see this WoD as being like a criticism of Doom WoDs and things like Doom, which, you know, contain within them the seed of something very bizarre and surreal and more like kind of subjective and psychological, but on the surface have these like narratives that are just kind of these usual like kind of colonialist ideas or you know, save the world kind of stuff that no one really gives a shit about anyway, but it's still like reflected in like the gameplay and the sort of very much more conventional, like weaker elements of Doom that really became the kind of trope of first-person games, and not really speaking to the strengths of like how it's like reflective of some kind of psychological idea. And yeah, I don't know, that's why it's like, it's almost the best way to do a criticism of something like this is to do it in the form of a Doom mod. And I think it's like just the level of literacy required to even be like, first of all, to be aware of this, to play through it, and then to really understand like that there's kind of an artistic perspective here. You see these like revenants that are, you know, being teleported in and out constantly, so they don't have enough time to like actually land down and hurt you, which is kind of like the mind sort of trying to create this like idea of a revenant or an enemy or something that is like just never completely working. And you hear there's these like big structures that like it looks like you can go over to them because there's enemies over there, but you can't actually. And then it just turns into this bizarre like confrontation very quickly into this like arena where it looks like you're really supposed to fight him, but once again you still don't really have the resources for it, and you just kind of have to keep running, and he'll just like, you think you've like ran past him, but he'll just like keep warping around this area too, sort of like the revenants. So he's just kind of like stuck in this area. I had a friend who played through this map and like had the resources to kill the Cyberdemon, and I feel like it really ruined the experience because he didn't see the Cyberdemon like warping. So there's a little like weird switch puzzle there that gets you past the stairway, and then at the end you get here at the end of the hallway and you die, you get blown up along with a bunch of these other enemies. You don't always die, in fact, actually, like a lot of the time that I play through this map I don't die, but I'm really glad that I got the death exit at that point. But yeah, like, this sort of sets the scene for a lot of the things that happen later in the WoD, and really effectively, and it's almost kind of like anti-game in some way. Like, you know, you expect there to be some big confrontation at the end, but then all the enemies just get blown up, and you're at the end and you die, and there's like, you know, and then it goes on into the more conventional maps for a little while, but then it keeps just coming back and coming back to these ideas, which is, I don't know, really fascinating to me, and kind of reflective of it as like maybe being more a piece of criticism or something like that. So I really appreciated that, and I hope you do too. I'll be back with more videos.